Thank you for tuning in to our Swansea Bay Full Stop podcast series, part of a big conversation and talking all things falls prevention. Falling or fear of falling affects millions of lives every day, but it does not need to be an inevitable part of ageing, and falls prevention is everybody's responsibility. So let's start the conversation and see what each of us can do to reduce these risks.
Hello everyone, I'm really pleased to introduce a very experienced clinician here today, Lynn Owen, who is the lead clinical nurse specialist for urogynecology and pelvic health. And we're talking today about a pretty common issue, I think, Lynn, in terms of incontinence and how that can affect falls. So to start off, just in summary, what is incontinence? And am I right in saying that this is quite a common issue?
Well, incontinence, it's essentially the lack of voluntary control over urination or defecation. However, incontinence can often just be a symptom. What we do see a lot of is bladder and bowel dysfunction, and that has many different causes. And as I said, the incontinence can often just be a symptom. The Department of Health actually estimates that there's potentially anything between 3 to 9 million people actually living with this in the UK. But that's what we see within our departments and our clinics is often just the tip of the iceberg. Embarrassment often prevents those who have it accessing the NHS services that may be able to help and assess the condition and look at ways that if we can't treat constipation or the bladder dysfunction or indeed the incontinence itself, we can certainly try and contain and help that individual actually achieve a sense of well-being and actually get themselves to be a lot more confident as well. So you're absolutely right. It's exceptionally common, and as I said a little earlier, it can affect any gender. It can actually affect any age, and many individuals believe this to be a condition that affects the older person. And that really isn't the case. There's always something that we can advise that could probably make this condition, if not better, then a lot easier to actually live with.
So how does incontinence lead to falls?
Okay, well, many individuals may not actually realise that there are all different types of incontinence. So, as I said, it can affect bowels and it can affect bladder, more commonly bladder incontinence. So there is a type of incontinence that's called overactive bladder. Symptoms of this particular type of incontinence tend to be frequency, so needing to go to the toilet more than 7 times a day. Urgency, so the need to get there is very sudden. And urge incontinence associated with that. So before you reach the toilet, there could be an element of leakage. And actually something called nocturia, which means that you can get disturbed more than twice a night. So in relation to falls, obviously the urgency and the urge incontinence, then there could be that element of the haste to get to the toilet. The individual may actually lose their balance, may actually really trip over the route to the toilet. And of course, if they're not adequately protected with the products that are available to contain the leakage, then they may actually slip on wet floors. And of course, there's also stress incontinence. So that's leakage when we cough or sneeze, laugh, lift, bend. And of course, that can be a very sudden loss. And I regularly say in clinic, I have never ever met anybody who wants to leak. Nobody wants to wet themselves. So that haste to get to the toilet or that sudden leakage will inevitably get us quite embarrassed and get us to the toilet in a bit of haste to actually get ourselves sorted, washed and changed. And when we come to nocturia, so that's that woken from sleep. And as you know, if we are woken quite when within a deep sleep, we can often be disorientated. And of course our bedrooms are dark. Our houses are dark and quiet. And if that's happening more than once a night, then we are disorientated, then there is more risk of actually having a fall on those occasions as well. And of course, if there's nobody around, that can be quite frightening for the individual to actually be to fall and not have anybody around to maybe assist them. So we're really keen on identifying nocturia and then attempting to treat it.
So how could they help to manage their symptoms themselves?
Yeah. I mean, that's a really, really good question. And it's something I ask every lady and every person that I see in relation to this. What have they done up until now, been able to manage this? And again, we come back to many ladies, many individuals associating this with maybe it's because I've had a number of children. It's because I'm of a particular age. It's because I am peri, post-menopausal. I think the key message here that I want everybody to take away is that bladder and bowel dysfunction is common and mostly treatable. So some of the symptoms that people could actually start to think about to manage the condition is first and foremost looking at, I suppose, adequate protection. So there are a wealth of products that are available out in lots of the services. There's a very good Bladder and Bowel UK online service. There are the ability, to maybe buy adequate pad protection. So in the first instance, in order for safety, I would want people to consider just adequate protection in the first instance. Once that is something that we've got in place, then we come to what can they do to actually improve the incontinence. And firstly, it's improving fluid intake. This is one of the main items that I talk about the most within my clinic setting. We know that, I suppose, if you like, Larry, sense tells a lot of people, if you're not drinking, then you don't need to pass urine. But actually, that really isn't the case. What we often find is people will restrict their fluids and then will actually have very dark urine, which then can actually cause an irritant in the bladder and make the sense of urgency so much worse. So improving their fluid intakes is certainly a place to start. Now, obviously, somebody who is maybe not particularly mobile and is, around the house a lot will not need to drink as much as you and I. But we often say little and often. And we frequently talk about cups of fluid as opposed to glasses or mugs. A cup of fluid is much more manageable than a glass that comes in all different shapes and sizes, from our little small juice glasses right the way up to our pint glasses. So if our ladies and gentlemen could actually think about more in cups, that can often be a lot more manageable.
Yeah.
And then we've got maybe adapting clothing. So elasticated waistbands, something like a Velcro fastening, so that they can quickly remove their clothing as well. And on top of all this, and something I really want to emphasise, is get assessed. Seek out via your GP or your healthcare professional assessment for, your incontinence. It's so common and mostly treatable. Don't feel that you have to live with it.
So there's some really great practical examples there. We don't want people to stop going out. We want people to go about their days and be as independent as possible. So what advice might you give people who are wanting to be out and about but are worried about getting to the toilet in time?
Okay, so I would certainly advise them to start some bladder training at home. It sounds as if this is going to be something that's going to get me doing something quite physical, and it actually isn't. That's not the training part of it. When we're at home and we're safe, I want to encourage individuals to try and just gradually extend their time visits between toilet visits. So for example, if we go to the toilet at, say, 4:00 in the afternoon, and then at 4:30 you get a sudden urge that you need to go again, then by the use of distraction and suppression, so sitting down, crossing your legs, standing still, and with distraction, maybe, reading the page of a magazine or the page of a book or getting involved with something on your computer or on the TV, to try and take your mind off your bladder. And so we start gradually. So if you could just hold for 5 minutes, all of this is suppression, and this is good. This is better than getting yourself to the toilet in a haste. Because what can actually happen over the fullness of time with this urgency and urgent continence, the more you visit the toilet, the less the bladder will hold. Actually recognising it, knowing what it is and how to control it can be really empowering for people. But again, when we're safe and when we're in the house, we don't want you practicing that when you're out and about and getting yourself, embarrassed because you've had a leak. Because we know in the early stages of practicing bladder training, it could be a period of where you may get worse before you get slightly better. But that, in association with a good fluid intake, once you're confident at home, is actually then utilising that and being aware and more confident when you're out that actually you don't need the toilet just in case. Just in case wheeze is something I hear every single day. I'm leaving the house, I'll have a wee. I'll get into town, I'll have a wee. I'll go to this shop, I'll go to that shop. Toilet mapping, we call it.
Okay.
And that's something we want to discourage our individuals from doing by practicing bladder training at home. And of course, pelvic floor exercises, actually learning how to squeeze their pelvic floor, how to really switch that pelvic floor on. So if you recognise you're going to cough, we often talk about engaging that muscle and then coughing, engaging the muscle and then sneezing. Now, this can all take a good deal of time, dependent on how long and how bothersome the issue is. But in a more practical way, there are on the Bladder and Bowel UK website, you can actually have cards delivered to you, which are called Just Can't Wait cards. And they're about the size of a bank card, and they're widely recognised. They're really useful for you to just discreetly show to someone so that you can access their staff toilets, for example, or toilets that may be not visible to us as members of the public. You know, there are apps you can download to find out where your nearest toilet is. So there's the three that comes to the top of my head. There's pee places. There's changing places as well, where, you know, they've got a lot bigger toilet to allow us to change, not just ourselves, but maybe if we got somebody with disabilities, they've got lots of couches that you can change there. And there is actually an app called Toilet Map as well. So those are some of the practical things. And if you're in the car, and of course, you know, you're on the motorway, goodness me, I need to get to the toilet. There are urinals, both male and female, which are available on prescription from your GP. A favourite of ours here is the Uribag M for males and the Uribag F for females. And they're the prescription product. So again, if you're on a coach trip, you're getting out and about, or you're in the car, then that can be something you can discreetly use as well if the toilets are not accessible. So those are some of both the practical things and things that our individuals can practice at home to allow them to be more confident when they're away from their own toilets.
So many practical examples there, and a lot of people that are in this situation. So if somebody is concerned, what do they need to do?
Okay, 65 to 75% of individuals can make significant health gains if their incontinence is properly diagnosed and managed. So get yourself assessed. Please don't be embarrassed. You know, we need to open this conversation. We need to allow this to be normalized, if you like. You know, don't be embarrassed if you have some leakage or if you have a bowel dysfunction. As I said, we can treat it. We can treat it, or if we can't treat it, we can make it significantly better managed for you. Certainly say to anyone of any age, any gender, any disability, get yourself assessed. You know, even though you might be embarrassed or a little bit worried about talking about it, I can almost guarantee we've heard everything within the service. And when we are not embarrassed, we appreciate you might be, but opening up that conversation is often the hardest first step to take.
There'll be people that will be listening that don't have any issues or concerns about continence at the moment, but obviously we've made it aware that this is very common, especially as we get older. And I was just wondering if there was anything proactively we can be doing within our general sort of day-to-day that could prevent a problem from developing in the first place?
That's a really good question, and that is something we're really keen on, sort of being proactive rather than reactive, and it is a health message that we are keen to get out there. So as well as some of the things that we spoke about, I mean, I'm still going to come back to, having this good fluid intake. Keep yourself hydrated. Secondly, for females, maybe even before they've considered having their family, having that awareness of your pelvic floor and how important it is to keep that area of our bodies healthy, strong, maybe being overweight, keeping yourself as much as you're able to be within your healthy BMI, because obesity plays a big part in weakening of the pelvic floor. Constipation itself can cause weakening of the pelvic floor, so straining to pass a motion. Sitting positions on the toilet is so hugely important here. Our bottoms should be slightly lower in the toilet and our knees raised. So getting a little stool, child stool, is actually a good place to start, and putting that under your feet. Leaning slightly forward, not straining to pass the motion. Our motion should be soft, easy to pass. Don't be fearful of medication for the bowels. But before you go down that route, look at your diet. Look at things you could bring into your diet that could keep your bowel healthy. We know about fibre, fruits, vegetables, brown breads, wholemeal pastas, as well as nuts and seeds, can all make our bowels a lot healthier. But fluid intake, again, I often say it's like the oil in our engine. If you haven't got enough oil in your engine, things will start getting slow, sluggish, and not actually perform as well as they should. Pelvic floor exercises, I will honestly say, for every 10 ladies I get into my clinic, at least 50% of them are doing pelvic floor exercises incorrectly. The key is when you do them and you know what you're doing. So it's starting from the back as if you're trying to prevent yourself from breaking wind. Bringing that through to the front as if you're pretending to stop your flow of urine. Holding it for a few seconds and then releasing. So that's a non-hold or a slow pelvic floor exercise. And then we've got the quick pelvic floor exercises, which are exactly the same thing, but you don't hold at all. So we suggest 10 slow, 10 fast exercises, 3 to 4 times a day. And there's apps that you can download to actually help you along with that. I mean, we're busy individuals and often we do need something to remind us, a little alarm or a vibration from our phone, which can be attached to your smartwatch, to focus on your pelvic floor. Squeezy NHS app is a very good app, and everybody in this department has it. So those are some of the practical things to stop yourself potentially getting issues as we age.
I, for one, have been sat here for the last 15 minutes doing my pelvic floor as you've been speaking. With so many sort of practical tips there, and it's been really, really helpful.
I will say nothing gives me more pleasure than seeing somebody leave my department with a smile on their face, with fire in their belly, to actually think, oh my gosh, I can do something about this. Get assessed. Don't put up with this. Don't think there's an excuse for why it's happened. Don't blame yourself. Don't be too hard on yourself that this may have been caused by something you've inadvertently done. There is always help out there. We will take time to actually listen to your concerns. We don't plan your care. We discuss your care with you. You are involved in that treatment plan. So even though there may be a lot of generic things that we can talk about, that treatment plan will be adapted specifically for you with your individual condition. So yeah, the take-home message here, Larry, is get assessed.
So that's the end of this episode. We hope it's provided some useful insights, and please follow the links provided for more information. But remember, falls are not inevitable. Together we can make a difference. Let's keep this conversation going.